Smoothie. Good.
Would everybody please turn off your cell phones or silence them?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I would like to call to order the June 14th, 2017 meeting of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Peterson,
Here.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales.
Here.
Mr. Miller's not here yet. Chairman Irvine.
Here.
We have a quorum of 3 members of the committee present.
Thank you. Our first order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of December 14th, 2016. The minutes were previously distributed. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second.
Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez-Rosales,
Yes.
Chairman Irvine.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 3 yes votes.
Okay, and I'd like to defer the next item, which is the minutes for the Strategic Planning and Service Delivery meeting held on March 8th, 2017. Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing continued service for up to 90 days to evaluate the pilot extension of Bus Route 11. Carol Morey.
Directors, Chairman. This ordinance would authorize the continuation of the existing pilot on the number 11 Lincoln bus route, which extends the route from the Western Brown Line Station to the Fullerton Red, Brown, Purple Line Station between the hours of 10 o'clock a.m. and 7 o'clock p.m. for up to an additional 90 days. This continuation of the existing pilot will allow CTA to have a full year of ridership data for consideration in evaluating the future of the route. As we previously discussed, initial evaluations of the extension show ridership falling far short of ridership targets with approximately 500 daily riders and a goal of 1,500. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, just could you share with the board just some of the outreach efforts that we've actually, because this will, by doing another 90 days, it will give us a full year. And you're saying they're at 500 now, they need to get up to at least 1,500. What kind of things have we been doing in terms of outreach, working with the local officials to try to increase ridership?
So there has been extensive outreach through the Chambers of Commerce, through the aldermen. There were 2 separate marketing efforts that were conducted with respect to this particular route. There was really unprecedented marketing and promotion for this route. We've never done this for another pilot, but we felt it was warranted here. So we pushed tremendously hard to provide every opportunity for the extension to be successful.
Carol, there's been a lot of feedback from committee members that use the route asking for morning hours on this route. Could you just review the reasoning for not extending the hours during this pilot program?
So initially, when we designed the pilot, we were responding to the concerns that we heard relative to wanting transportation for doctor's appointments, for grocery shopping, for visits to the library and parks. And so we designed the hours of the pilot to coincide with those requests. We have looked at, on a theoretical basis, whether the route would have been successful with morning hours. So right now we have ridership of about 500. Even if during the morning hours of 6 a.m. and 10 a.m., the route performed based on, an average route of this type, which it is not performing at that level, we'd still have less than 1,000 riders. We'd have about 990. So that's still well short of the 1,500 goal. And in fact, you'd have to increase the goal if you were to extend the hours.
So all the local officials that had come before us, they're well aware that the ridership is falling way short. And then have we asked them for any additional assistance in getting the word out, marketing, something else?
So we have worked closely with the Alderman's office as well as the Lakeview Chamber of Commerce. There have been a number of promotions. For example, there was one on Valentine's Day about writing love letters to the number 11. So that's just one of the many promotions that were conducted. So there was every effort made, both in outreach and in assistance in promoting the route.
Okay.
Just one more question. How feasible would it be to operate in just the times when the route was getting the most usage, so kind of later in the afternoon and just in the morning? And I mean, the morning some people are requesting.
So even when it was getting the most ridership, it really wasn't performing up to expectations. Obviously, at that point, you'd revise a goal, but based on the current performance, it wouldn't meet that goal.
Okay, thank you.
When are we seeing the highest ridership? Is it around the noon time?
It tends to spike during the PM hours, so say between 3 and 7 PM. But again, we're still running a lot of very empty buses during that period of time.
Any further questions? Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Since there is no further business to come before this committee, may I have motion to recommend committee approval of this item and to place on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
Would the secretary please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales.
Yes.
Chairman Irvine.
Yes,
That motion is approved with 3 yes votes.
thank you. And finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on 1 second, though. Let's make sure that court reports are ready for the next committee. You ready, Steve? We're ready, Alex.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I would like to call to order the June 14, 2017 meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit and Budget. Will the secretary call the roll,
Yes,
please?
Mr. Miller is expected within just a few minutes, I heard, so he should be here for this pretty soon. Ms. Irvine.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Chairman Silva.
Yes.
We have a quorum of the committee right now with 5 members present.
Our first order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of May 10. The minutes were previously distributed. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Will the secretary call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Irvine.
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Chairman Silva.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 5 yes votes.
Our next order of business is the review of the financial report. Jeremy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman, board members. I'm Jeremy Fine, your CFO. And we've reverted back to the old form of Microsoft PowerPoint, so I'll be able to work it a little bit easier this time
Okay.
around. So, with regard to our April returns and revenue, as depicted here, our fare and pass totals are down to budget and down to April of 2016. This is following the same form as what we've talked about in the prior months as well. With regard to our fare subsidy, again, this is down due to the fact that the state is only remitting half of what we expected. So we're down to budget and flat to last year. With regard to non-fare box revenues, we're up to budget, but down to April of 2016. So overall, for the month, we are down to budget and down to April of 2016. Again, we'll talk about in a moment with regard to our expense controls. We offset this, but again, these are revenue trends that we want to continue to focus on and reverse as possible. With regard to our year-to-date numbers on revenues, fare and pass totals, we see these down to budget and down to year-to-date 2016. Fare subsidy is down to budget and flat to year-to-date 2016. And then our non-fare box revenues are up to budget, but down slightly to year-to-date 2016. Again, overall, we see revenues on a budgetary basis and on a year-to-date basis below our targets. And we continue to enforce our free rides in catching those scofflaws and seeing a reduction in the number of free rides as compared to the year before. Our expenses, we see similar trends as what we've seen in the prior months on the expense side. We see labor and materials slightly down, but essentially flat on a percentage basis to our targets. Fuel and power continue to be very strong performers for us. So we see favorability in both of those line items. And then our provisions for injuries and damages and purchase of security services essentially coming in flat for the month. Other expenses is again another line item that we focus on, and with regard to our contractual expenses and keeping a lid on those. So all of those factors add up to a favorability of approximately $1.8 million for the year. So again, as compared to the $900,000 drag on revenues, we see on a monthly basis a net benefit of $950,000 positive variance for the month of April. With regard to our year-to-date expenses, the trajectory of each of those line items is somewhat similar to what we saw in the month of April. So again, looking there at the bottom, with regard to the total operating expenses of $9.3, almost $9.4 million of favorability in our expense line, that offsets the drag on our operating revenues of $8.7 million. So on a year-to-date basis, our net is a positive $650,000 variance when offsetting our ridership and farebox revenues. With regard to the three commodities that we purchase, again, as I highlighted on the prior pages, we see positive variance on a monthly and yearly basis. We have purchased all that we need to on a forward basis for the year of 2017. And then we still need to buy some additional purchases of fuel and power for 2018. But for 2019, we've purchased everything that we need to in power and gas, but we will still be making purchases on fuel in the future. So again, that continues to be a good news story with regard to our commodity purchases. Are there any questions with regard to the FAB?
Any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
So Jeremy, kind of going back to the April presentation, so the budget, you're about 45 days. This is April, this is June 14th, so we're running about 45 days in terms of actual. You're also coming up on June, CPS is letting out, you've got colleges that are letting out, but you've got an uptick in hopefully summer events like Lollapalooza and all of those kind of things. When do we sort, and for the summer months, is it June, July, August that we sort of see from tourism and events going on? You sort of see an uptick to offset, student ridership and all of that. Which months are the months that?
Carol Morey could talk more specifically about the monthly upticks, but we do start seeing an uptick in the summer and into the fall. We do take that into account in the way that we spread our budget, but Carol can talk more specifically with regard to the ridership trends in those particular months.
Yeah, and the only reason I mention that is as you mentioned, because you've been able to control expenses to kind of offset some of the revenue. We're in April, we're in June really, and you're
Yes.
only about 600,000 little and change in terms of positive variance. But again, as you go in the month, my concern is going to be, no matter what you do to control expenses, the revenue, the lack of revenue is going to catch up with us. So that's why I was concerned about that. And then I'll ask my last question after Carol talks about the uptick in the summer.
So ridership actually is a little bit lower in the summer, but you're going to see a higher average fare because, as you pointed out, we don't have the CPS students or, the college students who are riding on the U-Pass. So it could be slightly better from a revenue perspective, although I'd defer to Jeremy on that.
Okay, all right. My last question would be at some point maybe to talk with the board about what we're doing in terms of non-fare box revenue.
So we continue to pursue additional advertising opportunities on the platform. We're starting to see an uptick due to the amendments that we brought to you before with regard to the increase in the MAG and the new platform and street advertising panels that we'll be installing. So we're starting to see an uptick there. And then, as you may recall, as part of the budgetary process with regard to Park and Ride, we're starting to see an uptick on the Park and Ride revenues as well. So those are starting to catch hold. We're looking for additional ways to continue to grow our non-fare box revenues, because this is going to be a critical part. I mean, we've got, as we've talked about before, there's a lot of eyeballs on the system on a daily basis, so we need to capture that. And we continue to look at ways, kind of creative ways, to kind of expand that platform beyond what we've, kind of historically tapped into.
Can you be more specific about what ways are we trying to target more?
We're still looking into, some new opportunities, and, once we kind of flesh those out, and kind of see the viability of those. We'll be circling back with those specifics.
So any of those specifics regard co-branding or co-promotion with Uber and Lyft, since they're probably our biggest competitors out there as far as rides, and I know CTA, we could put a lot more people in the seats and add more revenue, but it seems more and more other major metropolitan cities are starting to use more and more the ride shares and the rides with Uber and Lyft and things of that nature.
Yeah, we're canvassing, what others are doing, what's, being effective out there in the marketplace, not only on that idea, but other ideas to see, again, how we can expand our non-fare box revenue line item in particular.
Just a question, especially for the summer, how does tourism play in? Because I know that they keep saying there's a rise in tourism and, we should be getting a lot more. Have we looked at those numbers? Do we have any idea what?
Yeah, there's definitely an uptick. I don't have those at my fingertips right now on how much that's upticked, but, the mayor had set out a target of 50 million, and it's, for several years in the future, and we've already exceeded that to like 55 million as a city. So again, that is an area that we want to continue to focus on and expand our efforts. So again, we're looking at ways that we can tap into that growing market as well.
And our marketing efforts have been also focusing on that area, right?
Yes, and we were looking to expand those efforts so that we can, again, tap into those folks that are looking to come and actually do come to Chicago for transportation.
Jeremy, in terms of additional non-fare revenue, how are we doing with the real estate transfer tax?
So the real estate transfer tax, is very volatile on a month-to-month basis. We're slightly below targets right now, but again, like I said, that swings wildly based
So how did
on
we
one
do
or
last
two.
year? So 2016.
We saw a very good outperformance last year. There were some very big buildings that sold. As you may have seen in the press recently, the John Hancock building and another large building in the Loop is going up for sale. So again, that helps us a lot. And it's also not just those two buildings in particular, it's just the overall tone that starts setting with regard to others looking to, potentially cash out of their positions as holders of those buildings. So again, you start seeing one or two buildings like that, it does move the needle, sizably for us.
And you've got all of this development going on in the West Loop. I think we
Absolutely.
talked about, trying to reach out to McDonald's before they actually move here.
Yes.
To set up something for their employees. But again, you just got an incredible boom of real
Absolutely.
estate and getting with those developers, even before folks move in. I know right at Monroe and Peoria Green, you've got, just like I said, development happening all up and down Halsted, and maybe working with planning to try to reach out to those developments as
Yes.
people move in or buy units.
Yes.
Maybe there's something that, again, I'm just trying to be creative and figuring out how to introduce folks
Yeah.
to our system, especially when you look at all of the investments that the mayor is making.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely want to tap into those exciting new developments and looking for ways to kind of expand the platform, as you mentioned, with regard to, coordination for the businesses, for the residents as they move in.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of comments to the remarks that you're making. One area that we think that we have a tremendous level of potential in is in the transit benefit programs. And to that point that you were mentioning, tying into new employers when they're coming into the market like McDonald's and others, but also tapping into existing employers who basically may not be aware of or may not have understood the benefits of the transit benefit program to their employees and starting to capture more of that market. The other thing that we're doing is we're looking to market specifically to new residents of the city, making sure that they know either new to the city or have moved to other places in the city what their transit options are and how they can use CTA to get to and from work or other activities that they want to pursue. So I think there's a lot of activity that we can still pursue that can help with the revenue challenges that we're facing right now. And I really have tasked Jeremy and and Carol and a number of our staff to not only look at our traditional ways of trying to capture revenue, but as all of you are pointing out, thinking outside the box in terms of new and innovative partnerships, opportunities to develop relationships where we can try different approaches to meeting, employers' needs for transit services, so on and so forth. And so I think over the next few months, you're going to start to hear more and more about the things that we're trying to put in place that hopefully will add at least to the non-revenue side of our budget sheet that can help deal with the challenges that we're facing right now with the revenue side itself.
Right?
You know,
Right.
just as a follow-up to what the chairman was saying with regards to developers. So this morning, actually, and I won't go into what building, but I just took a tour of construction that will be finished in about a year because of my business and we're involved in it. And they gave us a lot of detail with regards to the experience. The experience is really targeting millennials. So the target group is millennials in every aspect. But it's the developer that is really thinking of every aspect. And I think that might be where the conversation starts, because they're thinking exercise, and this is all for businesses that will be coming in. They're thinking, transportation was mentioned, I mean, but they're thinking of every facet
Yeah.
way at the beginning, and it might be, a place where we go earlier than after the fact to market, and so that it's incorporated. I mean, this is gonna be like a mini city, is what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
No, I agree. I think that what I want to do, and we're actually having, we want to have conversations with the city and DPD in particular to talk about how we sort of tap in to the developer community in a way that talks about how you basically market transit and transit benefits and other programs as part of your overall marketing for the commercial property. The other point that I wanted to make was, we're also starting to see a return on our investments and things we've already done in terms of opportunities for us. And you were mentioning the West Loop area. Well, I was just reading an article in Cranes just the other day about a piece of property that's right next to the Morgan Street station that the owner bought for $4.5 million and is now putting it on the market for $15 million. So there's an indirect benefit that comes from the investments that we made that we can also capture as these buildings start to turn over, and through the real estate transfer tax, we can get money coming back to CTA as well. So it's almost a 2-for-1 opportunity for us when we make the investments in the infrastructure and we improve the stations and things like that. The development that starts to occur around that can also then pay a benefit to us in terms of real estate transfer tax revenues coming back to CTA as well. So you're almost getting 2-for-1 in terms of the dollars you're putting into that type of investment, which is why our need to continue our capital investments and continue to improve our capital infrastructure is a critical component to the overall financial success for CTA.
Hey, Dora, I was just thinking about following up on something, too. So you've got residential buildings going up 1 million square feet. You've got 150, 100,000 square feet of retail on the bottom, 1,000 units. We need to think about, can we get a space, like for 7-Eleven, I know, we're at the Walgreens, we're at the CVS's, but if you've got residential buildings going up with 1,000 units, and they're gonna build out 200 square feet of retail space on the bottom, like, we're reading what's gonna happen along Wacker, along the riverfront. You look at what just happened over here at Canal, 2 twin towers, right across from where I live in the South Loop, there's 2,000-unit buildings going up, but they're putting retail. It's great that I think we're at CVS with Walgreens, the big ones, but if you've got 1,000 units above you and you've got someone with a grocery store, I mean, you can go in there and buy lottery tickets, why shouldn't you be able to go in and also buy a venture card or whatever? So I just think getting with the city, with all of the development that's coming online and trying to figure out a way, as Director Rosales just said, of being on the front end of this, and as people are coming in buying units, they're saying to buyers, oh, by the way, you get this benefit in terms of transit or whatever with the rentals and for sale, so.
It will really help, okay, if we can make up programs, okay, and we can follow up, follow them, okay, I mean, every other month, okay, seeing, okay, once
Yes.
we get a list, okay, of all the different programs, okay, that we can start.
Yeah, because Jeremy, the future for the state,
Yes. Not-
So when I look at revenue coming in, I don't see that getting any better anytime soon.
Right.
And so for me, we've got to figure this out on our own, kind of going forward. Not short term, but I think long term.
Yes.
I'm talking about ideas that, you know, not just 1 year, but things 5 years down the road, we've got to be creative. Because, yeah, it's Lyft, it's Uber, but it's also low gas prices. I mean, you're able to get premium now for
Yep.
$3.10 a gallon. So, you know, folks who are driving Uber and Lyft are also benefiting from $2.50 a gallon low gas prices, and we don't know when that's going to change. So
Absolutely.
that's why I'm like, you've got to find alternative things, because it doesn't look like some of these other things are going to change anytime soon.
I'm curious about the fare array that we have, and if there has been any consideration of other kinds of fares for fare programs that might draw in some of those people that are choosing transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft, because I mean, ultimately, when they choose those, it adds congestion on the road, which ultimately slows down our buses. And so I'm just wondering if there's been consideration of any new fare programs that might try and attract more of those people that are making those transportation choices.
Yeah, we're definitely looking at what's going on out there in the marketplace, looking at what other jurisdictions are doing as well. And again, you know, those are all considerations that we're taking under consideration for further evaluation. So we don't have necessarily, I don't have an answer for you right now, but you know, again, we're looking at kind of anything and everything with regard to, you know, again, kind of to the chairman's point about controlling our own destiny. So again, that's where we want to get to, driving those non-fare box revenues.
Well, and I think
Jimmy.
to that point, as we were discussing before about the developers and the business community, I think there are opportunities as part of our conversations with them to discuss exactly those types of issues, whether it's a unique type of fare product that might be more appealing to them because of the nature in which they conduct their business and other things. And that's, you know, as part of a transit benefit conversation, I view that as a subset of that for a couple of reasons. One, it can allow us to try out different approaches at a micro level where I don't take on the risk of the potential impact of my entire system on something, and we may find some things that actually seem to have a lot of promise in that. And two, it becomes more of a partnership conversation where the employers can feel like we're really working with them to find ways to basically support their employees' use of transit, as opposed to just saying, this is our product, take it or leave it. I think we're not in an environment where we can have that kind of a conversation. We have to have a conversation where we come to you and say, we have something that we think is valuable that your employees would benefit from. Let's talk about how we can make it work for you.
Jimmy, where are we in comparison to other city outsides? As we know, Uber is everywhere now. Where would you say that we are as a city?
It's a trend that you're seeing nationwide.
Nationwide, right.
Yes, yeah.
Where do we fit in the mix, you know? You have an idea?
So, you know, again, we see a lot of competition, you know, a lot of entrants into the marketplace here, you know, in the form of the rideshare companies. But again, it just provides an opportunity for us to be more creative, looking for ways to kind of expand our platform, and again, control our own destiny. So, yes, it's a trend that you're seeing nationwide with these new entrants entering the marketplace. So again, we're just trying to be, you know, proactive on how we address that, and not look for, you know, for kind of the wave to come and hit us.
I think I've had conversations with a number of CEOs of transit systems around the country. We're all trying to figure out sort of what the magic, you know, bullet is for, you know, this relationship between the rideshare companies and the transit agencies, with the, you know, with the bike share companies, with the car share companies. The reality is that the marketplace today for transportation options is completely different than it was just 5 years ago. And all of us are trying to figure out what's the right relationship, what's the right mixture of options, policy decisions, and other things that create the right opportunity to create the benefits and obviously to make available the options that residents of a major urban city want, while also dealing with the congestion and the air quality and the other issues that are a part of that dialogue. And so I think that no one has come up with a perfect solution to this. One of the reasons why I think it makes sense for us to pursue these types of relationships is that it gives us the ability to figure out what the right combination of things may be that can actually work for us. while continuing the dialogue with the ride shares, with the city, with planning, and development and others, to make sure that we're maximizing the very real benefit that transit provides to our communities that no one else has the ability to match in terms of the volume of service that can be provided within the timeframes that we provided.
Okay. Since there are no further questions, thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
We're gonna move to the next, our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of one or more supplemental indentures under which the Chicago Transit Authority may issue one or more series of obligations for refunding purposes with an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $290 million, secured by a pledge of capital grant receipts from the 5307 Urbanized Area Formula Funds and 5337 State of Good Repair FTA program.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Thank you. So we are asking for authorization for up to $290 million of refunding bonds for savings of previously issued federal government grant anticipation bonds that are commonly known in the marketplace as GARVIes. The bond maturity will remain at 2026, so there are only 10 years left on the bonds, so we're not looking to extend the maturity of the bonds. The present value savings is expected to be over $15 million over the remaining 10 years of the term. So again, this is an opportunity for us to lower our interest cost instead of paying an investor that $15 million plus in interest. We're able to recapitalize that into new capital projects here at the CTA. So this is a great benefit to us to be able to capture that savings. Morgan Stanley will lead the underwriting team. We will have 50% women, minority, and disabled veteran participation on the transaction. We have 25% African American, 20% Hispanic, 5% disabled veteran, and within all of that, 15% of the overall is women-owned business. We have financial advisors of Public Alternative and Acacia Financial, which is a woman-owned firm representing us, and then the counsels on the transaction. For bond counsel, it's Mayor Brown. For disclosure counsel, it's Charity and Associates, an African-American firm. And then the underwriters council, which represents and is selected by the underwriters, is Chapman and Cutler. We expect to sell the bonds in mid-July. And again, this is a great opportunity for us to tap into a very low interest rate environment and be able to capture that 15 million plus in savings.
Good. Any questions?
Yeah, Jim, the feds were expected to raise the rates, I guess, this week. Will that have any impact?
It's a great question. The federal open meeting is happening today. So there is an expectation of a 25 basis point increase to the Fed rate today, but that's already baked into the cake, so to speak, with regard to interest rates. We're continue to see very low interest rate environment, just like we see our commodities at very low historic rates. The current interest rate environment is very low as well. Even though there's a lot of noise in Illinois, it's still a great time to sell these bonds because, again, these are federally backed grant anticipation bonds that we're just doing for a refunding for savings. So again, great interest rate environment for us to be able to lock in kind of very high savings rates.
The only other comment that I would like to make is, one, just to commend you and your team for continuing to ensure, minority participation. I mean, women-owned business, Hispanic, African-American. One, I know what we're always trying to do on the construction side, but the professional service side is just as important. So to be able to exceed, in some cases, what we do on the construction side is to be commended. So again, thank you for paying attention to that.
It's very important for us, and the folks out here in the gallery from those firms do a great job of stepping up and being able to secure new investors for us. So they really, kind of earn earn those or earn that money as participants in the transaction. So they do a great job of stepping up.
What is the future of the Carbase? Okay, I mean, are we going to be able, okay, to continue using this?
So it has historically been a very stable revenue stream and has continued to be viewed as such by investors. You know, I don't know with regard to kind of long-term projections, but again, this is a credit stream that is very well received by the marketplace, by the rating agencies. So again, we expect this to be a very well-received transaction for us, you know, in July.
Thank you. Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Oh, you still, I'm sorry. Review of our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing a co-promotional agreement with the City of Chicago through the Department of Fleet and Facility Management. Jeremy and Mike.
Mike Gwynn, the Director of Revenues, joined me as well, and he can walk through the specifics.
Good afternoon, members. Presented for your consideration is a co-promotional agreement with the City of Chicago Department of Fleet and Facility Management, otherwise known as 2FM. This is the 10th year that the CTA has partnered with 2FM or its predecessor, the Department of General Services. 2FM manages promotional messaging for all city programs outside the purview of DCASE, the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, which runs some of the big festivals like Blues Fest, Taste of Chicago, et cetera. CTA is providing $392,952.50 in unsold advertising on buses and trains in exchange for an equal value in unsold advertising on the J.C. Deco bus shelters. It comes out to about 250 bus shelters. This promotion will allow CTA to reach out to a larger audience via the shelters, including visitors, residents who might not currently use the system, as well as pedestrians and drivers. The large format of the Deco shelters will provide a very visible means of communicating with everybody about CTA events, initiatives, and programs. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee has.
Any questions?
So there's no cost to the CTA?
No cost. It's just a trade of unsold space, unsold capacity.
Any
Actually,
questions?
strike that. I think we have to do the production, but it's a minimal cost for the actual signage.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved. Second.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing a lease or retail concession space and a license of the back lot located at 319 East Garfield Boulevard, Chicago. Carol.
So as stated by Chairman Silva, this ordinance would authorize a lease with Lake Park Associates, which is the development arm of the University of Chicago, for the historic station house on the south side of Garfield Boulevard, across the street from the operating station at Garfield Green. Lake Park will provide $219,000 in renovations to the historic station house, in addition to the rent I'll describe. The university will operate a welcome center and gateway here to the university's art block, which is centered on the south side of Garfield at Prairie, and which is eventually planned to extend to King Drive. The university will also use the station house to showcase community programming in Washington Park and to incubate small community-based businesses. The lease is for 10 years with a 10-year option and includes a 3% annual escalation. Initial rent is $35 per square foot. So that makes the net present value of the lease, including the option term, at $482,000, which when added to the capital contribution of $219,000, provides a current value of the lease to CTA at $700,000. CTA received 2 bids for the space, and the Lake Park proposal was the highest bid received and also meets the community benefits requirement. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
Carol, do you happen to know if the improvements they're planning to make include putting in power doors?
The improvements that U of C is making,
Yeah.
Maybe Chris Buchel can join me. There's a renovation of the historic station house planned as part of the Garfield Green, the Tiger-funded project there, and I think Chris can speak to that.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I just wondered if this station house, if the improvements that they were planning to do would include power doors, just for accessibility purposes?
Yes.
Would, okay. That's all. Thank you.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the state of Illinois through its Department of Transportation to access geographic information system data. Carol?
So this item is an intergovernmental agreement with the state of Illinois, acting through its Department of Transportation, to allow CTA to utilize GIS data regarding streets, points of interest, land use, and other spatial data. IDOT contracts with Here America LLC, which is a private provider, to maintain this database and provides the data to about 35 units of state and local government at no charge. This data supports our efforts to create and view maps and to analyze geographic data, which aids in our planning efforts. There is no charge to CTA for this service, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? No questions.
Well, we love deals that don't cost us money.
That's right. If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So, second.
Our next order of business is a review of an ordinance authorizing a sublease of a portion of 120 North Racine Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. Carol.
So the final item is the consent to a sublease of space located on the second floor of 120 North Racine, where our control center is located, to Shapack Development. So Sterling Racine LLC leases the first and second floor of that building. It was formerly occupied by the City of Chicago Department of Buildings and then leased to Sterling Racine in 2015. The lease requires CTA's consent to any sublease, but it also provides that consent cannot be unreasonably withheld. So Shapack's developments in the West Loop have included WeWork, Soho House, and the Parker. Sterling Racine will continue to be responsible for the payment of rent and its share of building operating expenses and utilities, and any improvements to the space will be subject to the terms of the lease and CTA approval. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions?
Yeah, what kind of company is it?
It's a real estate development firm,
Okay.
mostly in the West Loop. So WeWork is that co-working space that's in the West Loop, and the Parker is that new building right at the corner of Halsted and Lake. So those were some of their projects. Shapack Development.
Shapack Partners, okay. Oh.
Any questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Our next order of business is a review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of primary and excess property insurance coverage for policy year 2017-2018. Steve, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Steve Wood, Deputy General Counsel, CTA's Law Department. This is an ordinance authorizing the 2017-2018 property insurance policy. This policy is an annual policy that runs from July to July, and we renew it every year. Our insurance brokers at Mesereau and Paradigm marketed the renewal to both domestic and international insurance markets, and the insurance syndicate led by Lloyd's of London provided the best combination of coverage and price. The proposed premium for next year's policy, along with taxes and fees, is approximately $3,158,746, which is an increase of about $238,000 or 8.2%. The increase is based on an increase in our insurable asset values of about 3.7%. So about half of the increase is due to the asset values increasing. Those assets include renovation of electrical substations, rail station renovations, as well as the addition of a brand-new rail station at Washington and Wabash. valued at approximately $75 million. The CTA has had some claim activity in the prior year, and the market for rail insurance has hardened over the last year, which explains the balance of the increase we're looking at. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? So it's a fair increase. It's fair, the increase.
I'm sorry?
Is it fair
Is the-
increase?
Well, it's the market, so yes. it
It's the
is.
market.
It's fair for buyers and sellers. It's the best rates we could
That's
get with
good.
the marketing that we have.
But Steve, you said the overall increase was what, 8.7?
8.2%?
8.2, and you said 3.7% of that was due
Of that
to-
was simply applying the same rates we had to the increased value of our
yeah,
assets.
The
So
investments that we've made. So if you
Yes.
take out the 3.7 from the 8.2, you're stuck with, what, around 6?
we're at about 5 point,
Five.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, okay.
Yes.
So it's really a 5% increase over last year. And how many claims did we have?
Well, we had one significant claim in this period.
Is that the O'Hare?
No, this would be the IMD, the Illinois Medical District claim. We had a weather event
That's right. That
where a
lineup.
piece of the canopy flew onto the tracks, and it didn't look like a significant event in terms of property damage, but there was actually a significant amount of electrical and communication signal work that has to be repaired because of the surge that ran through the station.
What's our deductible?
Our deductible for most claims is $250,000, so for the IMD claim, it would be $250,000. We have a deductible of $3 million for rail car derailment or collision.
So the overall loss ratio, we probably haven't made any, well, Lloyd's haven't made any money off us.
I would say
years.
that Lloyd's has not made any money off of us under
So
this
this-
program, which we've had for 9 years.
Yeah.
Correct.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing payment of $35 million for utility, engineering, and relocation costs. Chris, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, your Chief Infrastructure Officer, Chris Buchel. So as you're aware, the RPM Phase 1 project requires extensive utility relocations. These include water and sewer, electrical and communication lines, as well as gas. And the relocations, I might add, need to be performed by the utility companies themselves. Further, most of these utility relocations must be completed in advance of the design-build contractor beginning construction. And this ordinance will authorize CTA to enter into agreements with utility companies totaling $35 million over a 4-year period. It's important to note the benefits of this, and that both the FTA and the general contracting community have stressed the importance of removing these utilities in advance of the larger project to come. This effort reduces the contractor risk and encourages more favorable pricing and schedule in the larger bids to follow. Furthermore, the ordinance calls for regular updates to the board and controls for budget variance that are appropriate to other contracts that you've seen in the past, most notably the JOC or the more recent mid-con contracts. So the cost estimate, the $35 million, is based on preliminary engineering that we did during the environmental phase, as well as continued development of bridging documents. And it includes extensive and ComEd and communications work in the public alleys to the west of the bypass and to the east of the Lawrence to Bryn Mawr section. As you know, we'll be expanding the right-of-way in those areas, and as we expand that, we need to remove the utilities. ComEd, Chicago Department of Water Management and Communications relocations due to new caissons in the public way to the north of the bypass. In some of the roadways there's a lot of older and very dense utilities that need to be moved as we put these large caissons in that will support the structure. And then finally, contingencies associated with doing work in an environment with some older utilities that we understand will not need to be improved, but may need a little more repair than originally anticipated, kind of looking directly at the project footprint. So all three of those together make up the $35 million. So in terms of board and budget reporting, all the utility all the activity, the payments against this ordinance will be tracked in Oracle. We have multiple reviews of the various agreements as they come forward. They'll be reviewed by our consultants as well as by the Infrastructure Department, Capital Finance, and Law. Similar again to JOC and MidCon or other procurements that occur, work agreements in excess of $250,000 will be signed by the president. If we exceed the categories in the estimate that are included in the ordinance by a significant amount, the chairman will have to sign. And then finally, if we go beyond the total amount and beyond the duration of the contract, that will require us to come back to the full board as we normally would. The board will receive both quarterly and monthly reports demonstrating our progress against the individual utility estimates. Some reports will be similar to what you receive in paper, and then as well, I'll cover that in the monthly construction report too. We looked at other similar jurisdictions and to see what they did, and while we didn't find direct correlations, we saw some very similar themes. We'll continue to look at those going forward. The president is a big proponent of best practice and looking at what other folks are doing, other transit organizations and transportation organizations. We'll continue to do that and glean lessons as appropriate. And then finally, we'll also be coordinating very closely with the city of Chicago in regard to this effort. So while we're the second largest customer of ComEd, the city is the first largest, and we'll be joining together with them to make sure that this effort stays on time and ahead of the contractor as necessary. That noted, are there any questions?
Any questions?
One of the things that you didn't mention, I think when you briefed the other board members, is the fact that Dover and I intend to be all over these contractors for minority participation. Whoever wins the bid, I know we've talked with you, talked with Mary, but we also said that where we're allowing them to do the work, that we will still not excuse participation of women-owned, Hispanic-owned, and African-American-owned businesses. So.
Yeah, absolutely. To your point, we are not managing this work the way we normally manage construction, but we will aggressively advocate for policies that are important to the organization. I think we intend to make sure that all these utilities are aware of our intent and to arrange, insofar as they intend to contract anything out, to do meet and greets and other types of efforts to facilitate a diverse workforce and diverse subcontractor participation.
Yeah, I just hope working with Karen, just put some language in there that says that we intend to work with them. However it gets wordsmith, I just want something from pen to paper as well. Besides the efforts that we're going to make, there should be something from pen to paper too.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you, Chris. Our final order of business is the review of 9 purchase and sales award recommendations. Helen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We will start with contracts numbers A1 through A5. Any questions?
Did you say A5, Chairman, or is it A3? How many As are there?
There's 3?
It's A3, A1 through A3, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, it went to
Wanna make sure
A3.
we got it.
Sorry, yes.
I have a question about the Zipcar contract. I just saw the Enterprise car share just shut down in Chicago because of problems with like damage to cars and lack of availability of vehicles. I'm just curious if there's been any change to availability of Zipcars.
Not that I'm aware of. We did piggyback off the city's contract, and they did get their bids in, their responses, so we're waiting for them to process their procurement, and then we intend to piggyback as well.
Okay.
So, but I'm not aware of any issues with it.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Any other questions in the A's? Let's move to contract number B1 to to B3. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question, B2. So, small contract, you've got L.B. Foster that's headquartered in Pennsylvania, and their DBE participation is trucking. Just trying to figure out how, with all of the trucking we've got locally, why does the DBE have to be out of Pennsylvania? I just don't know how that's cost-effective, saving money. I mean, fine, they're based, L.B. Foster, but for something as easy as trucking that we've got, I don't know how many firms that could have provided that, but yet they're gonna bring in a company out of town for trucking on this project?
So what we do ahead of time is when anytime we put a DBE goal that, is about 2%, it usually focuses on transportation of it. And so we send that information out to our trucking so they at least know that there is a procurement out there that could possibly need their services. And Langley Trucking is usually the trucking firm that responds because he does long haul trucking across state. And so out of all of our DBs, he is usually the one that responds to this type of procurement because he has the services and he has the trucks available to be able to do the long haul trucking. A lot of our trucking companies don't have that. They do a lot of like construction type trucking where it's just from site to dumping ground.
Okay. So what makes this unique is it's not just local trucking, it's long haul.
Yes.
So it's interstate.
It's interstate, yes.
Okay, got it, all right.
Any other questions in the Bs? Let's move to contract number G1 and G2.
The $2 million change order, can someone walk me through G1?
So at this point, we are asking for $2 million and for a 6-month time extension. We are going out for bid to get a new contract, but until that gets awarded, the using department has asked for that. And I think Veronica may be able to give you more information.
Okay.
Sure. We're currently going through the process of putting the new contract in place, so this is just to make sure there's no interruption to the support services that we get on this contract. As you may have read from your materials, this is the contract to support all of the systems that we have on our buses. There's a series of proprietary Clever Device technology that's on approximately 1,900 buses. Everything from what you hear, the announcements on the buses, all of the route information, bus tracker information, APC, which is basically how we count our passengers. So this is to make sure we don't have interruption to those services.
Is the new contract, is that going to be to continue to maintain and support Clever Devices equipment, or is for the entire system?
Well, it's all Clever Devices. I don't know if I
But I mean,
understood
it
your
wouldn't be
question.
like replacing that Clever Devices system with a new system. It would be to maintain and support. Okay,
That's correct.
got it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
And just for the record, I'm Veronica Alanis, Chief of Strategy, Data and Technology. I apologize for not introducing myself at the beginning.
Thank you. Let's move finally. We will review contract number I1.
I've got a question. So is there a reason that there was no DBE goals set for this? It's court reporting services for the law department.
Yes, so normally, something like court reporting services is not really something, there's nothing subcontractable besides the actual work of the court reporting. So we couldn't put a DBE goal on it. But what we did was, we sent the contract out to DBEs who could possibly bid on it as a prime contractor in hopes that they could bid on it.
So Karen, we've got 2 companies that's being recommended. Is there a way to talk with them about bringing in smaller firms? Because it's always, they don't have the experience, they haven't done work, but if you don't give them experience and give them an opportunity. So once we recommended 2
Right.
companies, is there a way for, your office or your shop to talk with them about maybe partnering up with a smaller woman-owned or minority-owned firm?
We haven't traditionally done that, and it obviously wasn't part of this RFP. Typically, these court reporting agencies, they're their own corporations, they have their own insurance for their own people. So it's not like any of these are particularly large, conglomerates or whatever. We have had companies that have done it in the past that were DBEs. This time, I think, and part of the problem is that some of, I think, the smaller, really small ones, they have people that call in sick or whatever, and then they don't show up to the trial, and so they, they don't make it on the next go-round or whatever. So, I don't really know. I could talk to them about it, but I'm just not sure it's really a feasible thing in light of kind of how their business is set up.
But what we can do is make sure that we invite them to all of our networking events, where we invite the professional service agencies and DBEs in, and then they could network at that point in time.
Well, it's a 3-year contract with two funded 1-year options. Just in terms of even working to get women-owned firms or small-owned firms to be positioned, in the future, to maybe come back and bid. I get what Karen is saying in terms of we've had firms that haven't showed up, don't necessarily have the infrastructure. But, again, I think using this 3-year window as an opportunity to continue to talk with firms and get them ready whenever the opportunity presents itself.
We can do that.
Do we have a pool of DBEs from this type of industry that we can pull from, or?
It's a very small, it's not even, I wouldn't call it a pool. We have a very few number of DBEs that can do it.
Any other question? If there are no further questions, may I have leave to place these 9 contracts on the omnibus for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Since there is no further business to come before this committee, may I have a motion to recommend board approval of the omnibus?
So moved.
Second.
I have a second.
Yes, it's been
Would the
seconded.
secretary
Chair.
call the roll?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Irvine,
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Alice,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood,
Yes.
Chairman Silva.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
We're right, Chairman.
Okay, all right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to call to order the regular scheduled meeting of the Chicago Transit Board for June 14, 2017. Would the secretary call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Miller,
Here.
Mr. Irvine,
Here.
Ms. Alvarez Alice,
Here.
Mr. Silva,
Yeah.
Mr. Youngblood,
Here.
Chairman Peterson.
Here.
We have a quorum of the board with 6 members present. All the members are present.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business today is public comment. Greg?
It appears that Ms. Williams has not come. Going, gone. No, we have no public comments here.
Okay, thanks. The next order of business today is the approval of the May 10th, 2017 board minutes that were previously distributed. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of May 10th, 2017.
So moved.
I'll second.
Seconded. Reverend Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Irvine,
Yes.
Ms. Alvarado Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yeah.
Yes. Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is executive session. It is my understanding, Karen, that there will be executive session today.
Yes, Chairman, we will have executive session today pursuant to Section 2, Paragraph C, subparagraphs 2 and 5 of the Open Meetings Act.
Thanks, Karen. I now entertain a motion to recess into executive session.
So moved.
Second by Mr. Irvine. Reverend Miller? Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
6 votes passes. We're recessed.
Ready, Greg?
You're ready, Chairman.
Okay. I now entertain a motion to return to open session of the June 14, 2017 Chicago Transit Board regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Ms. Irvine.
Yes.
Ms. Alva Rosales.
Yes.
Mr. Silva.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is approved, sir, with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business today is board agenda item number 4A. Karen?
The board in executive session discussed the acquisition of a property referred to as Parcel 8, which acquisition was previously authorized by the board for the 95th Street Terminal Improvement Project. The property, which is a gas station located at 2 East 95th Street, staff recommends that the property, which is owned by Standard Bank and Trust and Rock Build Enterprises, be acquired for a purchase price of $1,298,225. As a result of this agreement, the CTA's condemnation action will be dismissed. The acquisition of Parcel 8 will result in seller relocation expenses pursuant to federal law in the amount of $126,775, and staff is also recommending that the board approve this relocation fee.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I'm now entertaining motion to approve an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of real property located at 2 East 95th Street, Chicago, Illinois, for the 95th Street Dan Ryan Terminal Improvement Project, red line, and for payment of relocation expenses in the amount of $126,775.
So move.
Second.
Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Ms. Irvine.
Yes.
Ms. Alva Rosales.
Yes.
Mr. Silva.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is approved, 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business today is board item number 4B.
The board also discussed the acquisition of land for construction of the Red and Purple Modernization Project, specifically a permanent air rights easement previously authorized by the board for acquisition as Parcel 29 easement over one of the parcels located at 3351 North Sheffield Avenue and owned by Mary Feister. Staff is recommending a purchase price of $25,000 for this air rights easement.
Thank you, Karen. I now entertain a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of real property located at 3351 North Sheffield Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, for the Red and Purple Modernization Project.
Move it.
I'll second.
Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Ms. Irvine.
Yes.
Ms. Alva Rosales.
Yes.
Mr. Silva.
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood.
Yes.
Chairman Peterson.
Yes.
That motion is also approved with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is a report from the Committee on Strategic Planning and Service Delivery, Director Irvine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee met earlier this afternoon. The committee approved the December 16th, 2016 committee minutes. The committee deferred the March 8th, 2017 minutes. The committee also reviewed an ordinance authorizing continued service for up to 90 days to evaluate the pilot extension of bus route number 11 Lincoln. The committee approved that ordinance and placed it on the omnibus recommended for board approval. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Silva. The next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit and Budget, Director Silva.
The Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget met earlier this afternoon. The committee approved the May 10 minutes and reviewed the finance report. The committee also reviewed all of the following items: an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of one or more supplemental indentures under which the Chicago Transit Authority may issue one or more series of obligations for refunding purposes with an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $290 million, secured by a pledge of capital grant receipts from the 5307 Urbanized Area Formula Funds and 5337 State of Good Repair FTA program. An ordinance authorizing a co-promotional agreement with the City of Chicago through his Department of Fleet and Facility Management. An ordinance authorizing a lease of retail concession space and license of the backlot area located at 319 East Garfield Boulevard, Chicago, Illinois, Green Line. An ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the State of Illinois through its Department of Transportation to access geographic information system data. An ordinance authorizing a sublease of a portion of 120 North Racine, Chicago, Illinois. An ordinance authorizing the purchase of primary and excess property insurance coverage for 2017-2018. An ordinance authorizing payment of $35 million for utility engineering and relocation cost. 9 purchase and sales award recommendations. The committee placed all of these items on the omnibus and recommended board approval of the omnibus. That concludes my report, Chairman Peterson.
Thank you, Director Silva. May I now entertain a motion to approve the omnibus as stated by Director Silva and Director Irvine?
So moved.
Second. Reverend Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Irvine?
Yes.
Ms. Alvarez Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Youngblood?
Yes.
Chairman Peterson?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 6 yes votes.
Thanks, Greg. The next order of business is the construction report. Chris?
Chris Buchel, your Chief Infrastructure Officer.
Mary Person, Director of Diversity Programs.
So today we have 5 projects: the 95th Street Terminal Improvement Program, the Wilson Transfer Station Track and Structure Reconstruction, Ravenswood Loop Signals, Illinois Medical District, and the Quincy Loop Station upgrade. 95th continues on schedule and on budget, although tight to both. Work continues on the South Terminal and North Terminal foundations. We begin to see some important elements emerge here. We start to see some elements relative to what will be the bus area in the South Terminal. This is a drainage retention structure that holds the drainage and then ultimately provides it back into the city and state systems, so it's just kind of a holding area for it. Above it will become the bus terminal, the bus canopy, the column bases for the new bus canopy are to your right there. Those are the steel cages you see on the right-hand side. You can see these are structural elements on the abutments on either side that appear in the center for the South Terminal bus bridge. So again, you're seeing structural elements coming out of the ground. Shortly we'll be moving towards, you'll see structural elements that will start to span. You're also seeing the new terminal platform. So this is the South Terminal platform subgrade work. The next photograph, you actually see the new platform taking shape. The platform installation on this project is starting in the north and moving south. It's obviously progressed since this photograph has been taken. And those of you that drive by this area will also notice that there are elements of the new terminal, structural elements of the new terminal that are starting to take shape above and beyond what you just see in the platform here too.
So Chairman, to report out on the DB participation for 95th Street, they are on track to meet their DBE goal.
Okay, good.
Wilson Transfer Station, also continuing on budget and on schedule for completion later this year. We continue to work on track 4. That's the final track that we're building, as well as the east platform, and then all of the station houses are progressing. So this is a picture some time ago of the final caisson installation. And we did over 100 caissons at this particular location. We do a lot of caissons for the CTA, so I apologize in advance for all the photographs of them. But they are important milestones to us in the construction of our facilities. So this is the interior build-out. It's kind of in the very corner of the Gerber building, extends a little bit beyond it. On the north side of Wilson, it's the auxiliary entrance for the station. Sunnyside excavation and foundation build-out. So this is the accessible Sunnyside auxiliary that's under construction. The new track 4 decking. So this again is the final track construction. Between tracks 3 and 4, you have the new east platform. That's where the picture is being taken from in this particular instance.
So Chairman, the same with Wilson. Walsh is doing actually a very good job of making sure they stay on track with meeting the DB goal as the project comes.
So what was the goal? Because this project, when is the completion date for this, Chris, again?
Fourth quarter, really fourth
Fourth quarter of this year, and Mary, what was the goal?
Their goal is 27.52, and right now they're at 28%, but we expect them to balance out.
Okay.
Ravenswood Loop Signal Upgrade Project continues. You remember from our last reports, we're still in the manufacturer is putting together some of the back-of-house systems. They're going into the various relay houses that we're constructing. We continue to hang cable. We continue to put foundations in for that new signaling system. The signaling system overall is an important part of our capital program in terms of being able to provide service and upgrading an existing legacy system on this piece of the Brown line. You can see some of that foundation excavation and installation at Willow. This is one of several new relay houses that we're going to be installing in this area. There's a number of signal platforms that get installed, so this is basic structural work that supplements the more detailed electrical work that occurs on the project.
So I've got a question, Chris. How long, in terms of the Willow Relay House site, how long does that last? When was the last time that was replaced?
That system out there was, I think, originally installed in the early 70s.
Okay.
So it is what we call, Chairman, a GRS2 system, which is one of the oldest signaling systems that we have out there. And with the Brown Line expansion project, we continue to invest in that area and the growth that we've seen on that line as a result of earlier capital. So the IMD project continues. We are working at the Damon Station House, which will open in mid-July. We are in the process of receiving some basic materials out there, curtain walls, some of the steel infill materials while the work continues. This is not the final color, although I think it's pleasing, but it's really just waterproofing underneath a new curtain wall system that will be going on to the building. Quincy, Barry, any upgrades on?
Oh, sorry. So for the same thing for IMD, it's very early in the game, but they are on track to meet their goal. They're actually been doing a lot of work with the DBEs.
Well, the IMD is late to, you said mid-July?
That's just when the Damon station.
The Damon, okay, because then you've got the Polina one as well. Okay.
Right, which is actually the largest piece of work.
Okay.
So Quincy is also just getting underway not quite as far along as IMD, but we're in the stage of installing foundations. This again is an existing station in the loop that we're not only renovating, but also importantly making accessible. In fact, the real focus of this project is accessibility. So you can see we're starting a lot of the foundation work associated with that new elevator. So again, it won't surprise you to hear that we're putting in deep foundations, in this case not caissons, but micropiles, so it's the caisson's little cousin, but nonetheless required for supporting the new elevators that will be installed as a key part of this project. These are new stair foundations that are going in. Details relative to that installation. The project at IMD is on budget and tight to schedule. I'm sorry, Quincy is on budget and tight to schedule.
Okay. Any questions for Chris? All right, Chris, thank you. The next order of business today is new business. Is there any new business to come before the board, Greg?
No, sir.
Since there is no new business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.